Ben, you've been in the managed service provider space for many, many years. I'm sure you've seen the trend where risk management was more of an external thing. And from what I'm seeing is there's certainly customers that are asking their MSPs about it. What's the trends that you're seeing currently when it comes to risk management and how MSPs play a role in that?
So I'll say that the volume of inquiries around risk management and the level of detail that customers and clients are asking for has increased over the years. Our clients, especially in verticalized markets that have a lot of regulatory requirements, they're becoming more sophisticated and they're required to ask these questions when they're partnering with a vendor like an MSP or an MSSP who has access to the network. So, it's gone to the level of how are you doing these things, or share with me, Omega, your risk management policy. Share with me a copy of your risk register. How often are you evaluating risk? And that's we've seen that a lot with our financial institutions, our banking customers. They ask us questions very regularly because they want to required to follow some type of process themselves, but also perform some type of vendor due diligence, vendor management.
I guess that's interesting and a really good point that there's kind of two pillars of this, right? There's the risk management MSP side, for example, Omega or whoever it might be, and what are you guys doing to lower your risk? Because certainly companies and clients use you guys for different types of services. And then there's the other piece where clients are leaning on their managed service provider to understand how they can manage their risk. What's the driver? Is it compliance? Is it due diligence? What are you seeing as being kind of that driver for these
Yeah,
types of questions?
what we're seeing is more of a compliance activity. It's a bank examiner and also insurance as well too. Cyber liability renewals are really driving these questions and these discussions with the customers. We aren't seeing a lot of customers looking to do what I call risk transference, like Omega take over my entire risk management strategy. They still are running a process internally. They have their own committee, right? We've sat on committees for customers. We've sat and said, all right, have you evaluated risk with this software? What are you going to do if it goes down, if it becomes unavailable, short term, long term, right? And what are you doing to mitigate that? It's kind of like your BCDR strategy, but you're focusing in on the risk side of the business. So to sum it up, it's really compliance driven. A lot of our customers don't even ask those questions, about what Omega is doing from a risk perspective. But the educated buyers do, and they want to understand how we are managing risk that would potentially interrupt any type of service delivery to our customers.
Interesting. And do you find that, because obviously there's different verticals that have different drivers, certainly finance, government, and is it different, the kind of the risk profile and what they're trying to get out of the risk management type of exercise? Or is there some common themes that are the same? Like, for example, when it comes to risk, there's obviously the human element, right?
Yeah,
We know 80% of breaches happen because of human errors.
it's a
Like,
big piece of it. Yeah.
is there a common theme that you're seeing within under that risk umbrella or risk management umbrella, if you will?
Yeah, so well, under that umbrella, the common theme is again, it's probably a gradient scale, right? Where our financial institutions are, they want information. Large companies, potentially publicly traded ones, right? They have their own regulatory requirements, so they're asking about it. Insurance, smaller insurance providers, less concerned about it. Larger ones are, right? It's about the services we're providing to them, and if our services are unavailable, if our staff are unavailable, what does that risk create for them? If all their users are calling our service desk and they can't reach our service desk because their phone system is down, or our staff aren't available, what does that mean? How does that impact their business? We're seeing again a higher level of volume and varying levels of detail based upon the customers.
And what's the starting point that you see, right? If a client comes to you and is arguably doing nothing on the risk management side,
Mhm.
what would be that starting point that you would kind of guide them to, just to start? Because I'm sure it's a big process, right? It's a continuous process.
Yeah, it's not a
Yeah,
once and done thing.
yeah,
That's for sure.
right.
So from a guidance that I would give to any of our customers who says, we don't have a risk management framework in place today. How do I get started? So the first one is going to be, first step's going to be create a policy. What does your risk management policy say? What are you looking to identify here? From a risk perspective, right? Is anything that could interrupt the business operations? Then you need, to really develop a committee, a risk committee, and on our side, I'll speak to for a little bit, is it's made up of many different individuals inside the organization. It's just not me and our data center manager sitting down. Yeah, we identified physical risks, sure, but there's people risks, there's outside events. COVID has really kind of shown us the risk there, right? From a people perspective. You have software risks, supplier risk, all those things. So you and I try to identify this. It's a lot of brainstorming, and it's looking through what's the likelihood, what's the consequence of this risk actually happening, how are we managing it today, and what can we do to prevent it from happening. And some risks you just can't prevent. It's about being prepared to respond if it does happen.
Interesting. So really, and we hear this a lot. You're never 100% secure, and that's the
Correct.
reality. And you got to kind of pick a threshold which the company has deemed acceptable when it comes to risk, and how do you mitigate that if badness happens, right?
Right.
And then you talk about getting buy-in and having different folks at the table or different stakeholders. Where does the executives and board fit into this, or do they not when it comes to?
Yeah, so typically you aren't going to have board members who are part of a risk committee meeting. You may have an executive who's on the board and who reports to the board that partakes in the process, or maybe manages the risk committee, or manages the process. And then that executive would then report to the board on findings from the risk committee, recommendations to mitigate risk, whether it's a process change, CapEx, vendor change, could be something like that. That is then advised to the board of the direction of where they should go to either manage or mitigate risk. Just like you're on 100% secure, you can't get rid of all of your risks. There's always risks. This is, what are you doing to manage it? Have you identified it? And how is it being managed is really what regulators and auditors and insurance companies are looking for our clients to work through.
And what's the cadence that you're seeing as far as, is this a quarterly, monthly thing where you
Yeah.
revisit the risk?
So from the OMEG side, it's quarterly. We have a quarterly risk committee meeting. We have a process we work through. There's an agenda, there is meeting notes. We have the ability for any employee or manager inside the organization to submit a new risk item. It's a SharePoint form that everyone can say, hey, I think this is a risk, right? We will identify those submissions as part of our risk committee meeting, and then see if we've already identified the risk based upon our risk register. And then go from there. And then we also review any incident reports that have occurred in the past quarter. So there could have been an outage for something that was, due to a software or hardware failure, ISP, whatever, right? And we're including that incident report, kind of the closeout of the incident report, is part of the risk committee meeting to identify if we've identified the risk that caused the incident to happen in the first place. It's process failure, personnel failure, not following documentation. Could be, we have multiple internet connections and 2 of them went down. That's nothing that we have control over. So do you buy a third, right? Do you buy a fourth? Do you reroute traffic to another data center? Those are all things that we discussed in the risk committee meeting as scenarios that could happen. Have we identified that risk, and are we properly managing it? And just because you evaluated it once doesn't mean it's good for the next 10 years. That's reviewed at every quarter to make sure
Sure.
it's your response is still appropriate based upon the business, right? It could be volume, could be customer profile, and based upon technology that's available. It could be that, we couldn't do anything about X, 5 years ago, but now there's new technology. There's new ways to deliver this, right? There's new ways to better protect or insulate ourselves. That's the constant evolution of risk management. It never stops. We see customers who do it once a year, And to them, it's a daunting task, right? Because they got to sit down and go through it and spend days. Whereas if we find, if you involve people from different parts of the organization, you do it more frequently, it's an easier process to get through because everyone's not reminding or refreshing their memory. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? It's important. Everyone has other things maybe they want to be doing, but this is part of management and running a business, especially from a service provider perspective.
Are you telling me risk management is not the most exciting thing that you could be doing?
It's like talking about backup. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we partnered with EMC for many years, and when we'd have any type of backup discussions with them, they're like, this is not the most exciting topic in the world, but it's something that you have to talk about. So
drink lots of coffee while
Yep.
doing it. That's great. And so kind of my last question that I want to cover is what are the trends you think we'll see in the near future, and as it relates to risk management, and how risk management is being done in the sense of compliance? And do you think that it's going to be more explicit as to what risk management is, and just as important what that outcome is? Because certainly I find right now it's kind of like, the framework certainly gives you an idea of what you need to do, but it's not explicit. It's left up to the company to kind of decide. Maybe that's by design. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So I think the next couple of years are going to be real interesting. It's going to be more and faster, right? Customers are going to want more, and they're going to want it faster. Let's kind of go back in history, if we can, just for a moment. 6-7 years ago, we had banking customers that were hosting their environments. They said, well, we need you to do a SOC 2 audit. Well, what's the SOC 2 audit? And we went through the process, and the SOC 2 audit is a risk-based audit. And they are going through and validating that the organization, the entity, Omega Systems, for this example, we have backup, we have disaster recovery, we have policies, we have procedures. We have a risk management program. We have vulnerability management. We have incident reporting. So a third-party entity is validating that we're essentially doing everything that we say we're doing. They produce a 90, 100-page report, and customers are asking for this. It started with one specific bank that wanted us to get a SOC 2. Now there's probably about 30 different customers that rely on that SOC 2 report from Omega Systems to help justify their data security. I've partnered with Omega. I host everything in their environment, or they manage my network. Here's everything they're doing from a data security perspective. And they're showing that to regulators, to insurers, to financial backers, right? So that's been very important. We've seen that trend really increase over the past couple of years. And it's been a very beneficial for us, because customers will start these questions of, well, what are you doing for this? What are you doing for that? How's your HR process? How do I know that when someone is offboarded, you're removing them from your system and our systems? And we have policies and procedures for all that. And the SOC 2 process audits all of that for an entire year. So we've seen great value in that, and so have our customers. So I think we're going to see more customers on our side leveraging that audit report to help kind of drive their business and justify the partnership with Omega, that we are a quality MSP, but we actually know what we're doing. Not every MSP goes through the process of getting a SOC 2. It's not easy. The audit process, it's just started for us, and it's probably 6 to 8 weeks of documentation review, interview process, on-site visits from auditors. So that really shows quality, right? And it's not us producing the report; it's a third party. So we're going to see. I expect more of that from our customers, right? More questions, deeper understanding of how Omega is operating their business. So that's one thing. You're going to see insurance requirements increase. If customers who haven't done it today gone through cyber liability renewals, it's increased. We've done a couple different webinars on this topic, and years ago it was, do you have a firewall and do you have, antivirus? And that was good enough then, right? Now they're asking questions about, do you use an MSP? What services do they provide? How many domain admins have access to the environment? What vulnerabilities exist? Have you done a vulnerability scan? Have you done an external penetration test? What software is deployed? Last year alone, between Microsoft with the Exchange vulnerabilities, Kaseya with their breach, and with the Apache Log4j, all of those we've seen, we work with all of our customers on their cyber liability renewals because they provide us the form and say, can you help me fill this out? And absolutely, that's what our TAM team does. All those three software platforms were all on a lot of the different renewals we saw, asking, did they use it? Did they use it during the time period? If you did, how did you patch it? How quickly was it patched, right? So that is going to become much more important from a risk management perspective for clients and customers who seek cyber liability coverage. It's not going to be just a firewall and AV anymore. They're getting deeper and deeper into the environment. And I have a whole bullet point list from one of our insurance providers of what they're asking, carriers, or I'm sorry, insureds, of how they're managing the risk associated with that. Because that's what, the insurance is looking to identify. What are the risks with writing this policy for this insured? Great, they're a great company, but they have 100 million instances of PII. Well, that sets off red flags. How are you training your end users to identify phishing emails? How do you handle traveling? How do you handle system hardening? Do you take a system out of the box and plug it right into the network? Or does it go through a process before it's given to an end user? So those are the trends that we've seen already this year, and I only expect more of it and just a deeper understanding for not only our customers, but also for even their vendors, their partners that they work with as well too, before they do any type of data exchange.
That's some good insight. I just want to stop there and say thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're a busy person.
Of course.
Hopefully we talk again soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, James.
Thank you.